On my 18th birthday, I didn't wake up to balloons or laughter, or the smell of birthday cake baking in the oven. I woke up to the sound of paper rustling. The kind of sound that means someone's counting, organizing, preparing. When I walked into the kitchen, my adoptive mother was sitting at the table, a calculator in her hand, eyes fixed on the glowing numbers like they were the only thing in the world that mattered. Next to her, my adoptive father sat in silence, his eyes on his coffee mug, not daring to look up, and that's when she said it, words that cracked my entire world open. "We only adopted you for the government money." I froze. I thought it was a joke, a cruel, off-handed joke, something to be explained away in a second. But then she kept going. Her fingers clicked against the calculator buttons, fast, cold, methodical. 1,500 a month, Colton. 18 years of reliable income, but now, the checks stopped coming. That's how my birthday began. Not with candles, not with love, but with a transaction way closing. My name is Colton Reed. Or at least, that's what I've been called for 18 years. The woman in front of me, Beverly Reed, is 52 years old, works as a bank teller, and has just informed me that I was never her son. Just a paycheck. Sitting beside her is Harold Reed, my adoptive father. Quiet, soft-spoken, the kind of man who disappears into the wallpaper when tension fills a room. He's the one who taught me to fix engines, patch walls, change oil. At the time, I thought he was teaching me because he cared. Now, I realize he was just keeping me busy, keeping me out of the way. I tried to laugh. I actually did. A small broken sound. "You're serious?" I asked. "This is my birthday. You're telling me this or no?" Harold shifted in his chair, eyes still glued to the floor. "The adoption subsidies end when you turn 18, he said quietly. That was always the deal. The deal. That word hit harder than any slap. "I'm your son," I said, my voice cracking. "Not a deal." Beverly finally looked up. Her gray eyes were colder than steel. "No, Colton," she said. "You were a ward of the state that we agreed to house in exchange for compensation. We fulfilled our contract. Food, shelter, education. The contract is complete." Then she stood up, walked to the corner of the kitchen. There, waiting against the wall, was a black garbage bag. My garbage bag. "Your belongings are in here. Personal items only. Anything we purchased remains our property." Her words didn't sound human. They sounded like something written in fine print. I stared at her hands, the same hands that used to pack my lunches, sign my report cards, hand me my allowance. And I realized those hands had never touched me with love. Never comforted me when I was sick. Never reached out when I was scared. She glanced at the clock. "You have until noon to vacate," she said. "That gives you 2 hours and 13 minutes to make arrangements." Harold's chair creaked as he stood. "Beverly, maybe we could give him a few days." Her head snapped toward him, and just like that, he wilted. "The mortgage payment's due tomorrow," she said. "We're listing the room on Craigslist this afternoon." I blinked. You're renting out my room?" "It's not your room," Beverly said flatly. "It never was. You were a long-term guest whose stay has ended." I looked around the kitchen, the beige walls, the neatly stacked coupons, the faint ticking of the clock that ruled Beverly's world. I'd eaten breakfast there every day of my life. I'd done my homework at that table, but in that moment it all looked foreign. Like I was standing in someone else's house, and I guess I was. "I don't have anywhere to go," I said quietly. "I have $47. Where am I supposed to go?" She reached into a folder. A folder, because of course she had one, and slid a pamphlet across the table. "There's a shelter downtown," she said. "They accept adults 18 and older. The address is highlighted. A homeless shelter. The woman who raised me, who'd held me as a baby, who'd seen me grow up, was handing me directions to a homeless shelter, like it was a grocery list. "Please," I said, my throat burning. "Just give me a week. I'll pay rent." "With what money?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Your part-time job at the garage? 30 hours a week at minimum wage won't even cover utilities." She wasn't wrong. She was never wrong about numbers. I'd been saving for community college, $800 total. It wouldn't even get me a deposit anywhere. Harold finally broke. He stood, grabbed his keys from the hook by the door. "Good luck, Colton," he said quietly. Then he was gone. Just like that. The sound of his truck faded down the street, and suddenly it was just me, Beverly, her calculator, and that garbage bag full of my life. "The clock is ticking," she said, eyes never leaving her calculator. "I have errands to run at 11:30. I'll be locking the house when I leave." I walked to the corner, lifted the bag. It was light, too light, 18 years of life. And it fit into something you could carry with one hand. Inside, clothes, a few books, my toothbrush, the cheap watch my boss had given me last Christmas. No photos. No mementos. Nothing that said I'd ever been part of this family. I turned back to her. "Was I ever anything to you?" I asked. "Anything at all?" For the first time, she paused, looked at me, and for half a second, I swear, I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Regret, maybe. Or the ghost of it. Then it was gone. "You were a responsibility," she said. "We managed you successfully. We never hit you. We never starved you. We met all state requirements. That should be enough." It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. I stepped toward the door, that bag hanging from my hand. "Goodbye, Beverly." I didn't call her Mom. Not anymore. She didn't look up. Her fingers kept clicking on that calculator, adding up something new. And just like that, I was out. Growing up in the Reed household, I thought we were normal. A little cold maybe, but normal. Every family had their quirks, right? That's what I told myself whenever Beverly would introduce me as, "This is Colton, our adopted son," always emphasizing that word, like it was a disclaimer. Harold would just nod, sipping his beer, never correcting her. They adopted me when I was 3 months old. I don't know the circumstances, only that I was a ward of the state, and they were approved foster-to-adopt parents. Beverly kept all the adoption papers locked in a filing cabinet in their bedroom. I'd seen her open it twice in 18 years. Each time, she'd slam it shut when I walked in, like I'd caught her doing something she wasn't supposed to. Our house was beige. Beige walls. Beige carpet. Beige furniture, Beverly used to say. Neutral tones don't go out of style. That was her motto for life. Generic brands, coupons, sweaters instead of heating. Every decision measured in price. Cost efficiency. Harold was different. At least I thought so. He showed me how to fix things. Cars, pipes, drywall. "A man should know how to fix things," he'd say, but he never let me touch his prized car, a 1969 Mustang he kept under a cover in the garage. "That's not for kids," he'd say. Even when I turned 17, I was still a kid. Now I get it. I was never going to be old enough. Never his enough, and the locked room ace in the basement. I used to hear Beverly down there sometimes, whispering into the phone, always about Troitian numbers. Always about ITIN payments. Back then, I thought maybe she worked from home sometimes. Now I know better. She was probably talking to social workers, confirming deposits, discussing her case, discussing my Maykamsi school was my escape. I wasn't popular. Wasn't brilliant, just invisible. Teachers liked me because I never caused trouble. Kids liked me because I could fix their cars cheap in the school parking lot, but I never invited anyone home. How could I? Our house didn't feel like a home. It felt like a museum someone forgot to lock up. At 16, I got a job at Jennings Auto Repair Old Man. Jennings was 70-something, tattooed from his Navy days, and mean as hell until you earned his respect. He paid me under the table at first, then officially after I turned 17. "You got good hands, kid," he used to say. Steady, patient. That's rare these days. Every dollar I made went straight into savings. Not because I wanted to, because Beverly charged me rent. $50 a month for increased utility usage, $30 for wear, and tear on household property, $25 for administrative overhead. That's what she called it, administrative overhead. She had a spreadsheet for her own son. I bought my own clothes from thrift stores, paid for my own phone. My own school supplies. Beverly said it built character. Harold just stayed silent, like always. We had 3 family photos. That's it. One from a cousin's wedding when I was 5, one from middle school graduation, and one from my 16th birthday, at the DMV when I got my license. Beverly kept them in a drawer. Not on the walls. The walls were decorated with generic art, flowers, landscapes, empty smiles from nowhere. Dinner was at 6, sharp. Always 6. Beverly's meals were a science. Roast on Sunday. Sandwiches Monday, soup Tuesday, casserole Wednesday. Each bite measured, each penny accounted for. The TV news droned in the background while Harold grunted in agreement to whatever was said. Beverly cut her food into identical cubes. And me? I just tried not to exist too loudly. Once, when I was 14, I asked about my real parents. She didn't even look up. The state placed you with us, she said. That's all that matters, but it wasn't. And deep down, I think she knew that. Imagine waking up on your 18th birthday, thinking it's supposed to be a milestone, freedom, adulthood, a new chapter, but instead, it's the day you find out you were nothing more than a paycheck. That morning, the air in the room felt heavier, colder. Like the walls themselves already knew what was coming. The temperature must have dropped 10 degrees. Maybe it was just me. Maybe it was the way Beverly looked at me, distant, clinical, like I was an entry on a balance sheet. They couldn't care for you, she said curtly, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. We stepped up when others wouldn't, that's all you need to know. Harold sat beside her, quiet as always, his face half hidden behind a chipped coffee mug. Best not to dig into the past. Son, he muttered, one of the few times he ever called me son, without sounding like he was reading it from a script. Birthdays were always like this. Acknowledged but not celebrated, a card, always generic. Happy birthday, printed inside, signed Beverly and Harold Reed in neat identical handwriting. Christmas was the same, practical gifts only, socks, school supplies. 1 year, a graphing calculator because it was required for class. No wrapping paper, no laughter, no joy. The tree came down December 26th, every year, without fail. No point paying for electricity for lights we're not using, Beverly would say, unplugging the cord with mechanical precision. I see it all differently now. Every memory, tainted by the truth, the way she kept meticulous records. Of every penny spent on me. The way Harold always introduced me to his co-workers as the boy. The way they never came to parent-teacher conferences unless the state required. The hushed conversations that stopped the moment I entered the room. I used to think they were talking about bills. Or neighbors. Now I know they were probably talking about their monthly windfall. But here's the thing about growing up without love. You don't realize it's missing until someone shows you what you should have had. I thought all families were transactional. I thought all parents kept spreadsheets. I thought everyone's home felt like a now temporary arrangement. That could end at any moment. I was right about that last part of at least. Sit down. Colton, Beverly said that morning, not looking up from her calculator. The kitchen table was covered in documents, spreadsheets and bank statements, perfectly stacked, perfectly aligned. The sound of her calculator clicking filled the silence like a clock counting down to something I couldn't yet see. Now that you're 18, she said, the checks stopped coming. My stomach dropped. The same feeling you get when you miss the last step on a staircase. What checks? I asked. Harold shifted uncomfortably in his chair, the wood creaking under his weight. He was already in his hardware store uniform, khaki shirt, name tag, that faint smell of oil and sawdust. Probably eager to escape. Beverly didn't hesitate. The adoption subsidy checks, $1,500 a month, for 18 years. The words hit me like punches, one after another, landing square in my chest, my throat, my gut. $1,500 a month, 18 years. I was doing the math even as my world collapsed around me. 18 years, 12 months, that's $324,000. That's what I was worth to them. Beverly kept going, her tone flat, her eyes never leaving the paper. We provided what the state required: food, shelter, education. The contract is complete. You need to leave by noon. I stared at her. You're joking, I said, my voice cracking like I was 13 again. This is a sick birthday prank, right? Any second now you're gonna laugh and bring out a cake? She didn't even blink. The garbage bag has your belongings, she said, pointing with her pen. Leave the key on the counter, the garage door opener too, and the spare key under the fake rock. I know you made a copy. Of course she knew. Beverly knew everything that might cost her money or compromise her control. I don't understand, I said, though deep down I was starting to. The puzzle pieces were snapping into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. You raised me. I call you Mom and Dad. How can you just kick me out? You're legally an adult, she said, finally looking up from her calculations. Her gray eyes were like cold metal, unfeeling, precise. We have no further obligation to house you. In fact, keeping you here could complicate our taxes. We've been claiming you as a dependent, but now that the subsidy has ended, you're a liability rather than an asset. A liability. An asset. I wasn't their child. I was a U balance sheet. Please, I said, and before I even realized it, I was on my knees. Right there on the linoleum floor I'd mopped every Saturday for 18 years. I'll get a full-time job. I'll pay rent. I'll buy my own food. Just give me a month. A week, anything? Harold looked away, studying the wall like he'd never seen it before. Beverly didn't move. She just pointed at the clock. It's 9:47, she said. You have until noon. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I stayed on my knees, 30 seconds, maybe a full minute, waiting for something, anything, a crack in their resolve, a flicker of humanity. But there was nothing. Beverly went back to her calculator. Harold stood up, stepping around me to refill his coffee like I was a piece of furniture. When I finally stood, my legs were shaking. 18 years, I said. 18 years of calling you my parents. Doesn't that mean anything? You were well cared for, Beverly said calmly. Fed 3 meals a day, clothed appropriately, educated through the public school system. Medical and dental care is required by state guidelines. You received everything you were entitled to. What about love? The words barely came out. Just a whisper. Her fingers paused on the calculator keys for a fraction of a second, then resumed. Love doesn't pay mortgages. Colton. I walked to my room, or what had been my room. The walls were bare, as they always had been. Beverly didn't believe in posters or unnecessary personalization. Rooms should be functional, not emotional, she used to say. My clothes were already sorted into 2 piles. Things I'd bought myself went into the garbage bag. Things they'd bought stayed. The laptop stayed. School property. Technically. The alarm clock stayed. It came with the furniture. Even the baseball glove Harold had given me when I was 12 stayed. We'd never played catch. Not once. He'd only bought it because the school required it for PE. I found myself staring in the bathroom mirror. Brown eyes. Brown hair. Average everything. I looked like nobody. Maybe that's why it was so easy for them. I blended into their beige world without disrupting the color scheme. When I walked back into the kitchen, Beverly was on the phone. Yes, the room will be available this afternoon. $450 a month, utilities included. First month and security deposit required. She was already renting out my room, while I was still standing in it. Not another foster kid this time? I asked. She covered the phone. A paying tenant, she said. A real asset. Who were my biological parents? The question slipped out before I could stop it. She frowned. Does it matter? They gave you up. We're giving you up. Seems like consistency to me. You know who they were? The state provided basic medical history for insurance purposes. Nothing more was relevant to our arrangement. Our arrangement. That's what my childhood had been reduced to. A line item on a spreadsheet labeled arrangement. Harold came back from the garage. Holding a $20 bill, he handed it to me without meeting my eyes. For food, he muttered. Until you get settled, I stared at it. $20. After $324,000. $20. I wanted to tear it up, throw it in his face, but I didn't. Pride doesn't mean much when you're about to be homeless. Time's up, Beverly said at exactly noon. She stood by the door, holding it open like a hotel clerk checking out a guest. We have appointments this afternoon. I picked up the garbage bag, surprisingly light for something holding my entire life. As I passed her, I stopped. Did you ever Even for a moment, think of me as your son? She looked at me with those cold, gray eyes. I thought of you as my responsibility, she said, and I fulfilled that responsibility completely. The door closed behind me with a final, echoing click. Then the deadbolt turned, then the chain, and then silence. Outside, the neighborhood carried on like nothing had happened. Lawnmowers hummed. Kids laughed, families being families, something I'd never really known. I stood on the sidewalk, holding that garbage bag, $20 in my pocket, nowhere to go. The shelter pamphlet Beverly had handed me was already damp with sweat. The address? Downtown Dallas, at least an hour's walk. Then my phone buzzed, a text. Beverly, you're no longer on our family plan. Service ends at midnight. Plan accordingly. Even my phone had an expiration date. Every trace of my existence, budgeted, scheduled, efficiently terminated. So I walked, and I kept walking. Last Tuesday, June 20th, everything changed again. I was sitting outside the Dallas Public Library, my usual spot on the concrete steps where the cameras didn't quite reach and the guards didn't care as long as you looked clean enough. 3 months of shelters had taught me how to survive. Shower daily, even if it's cold. Shave with dull disposable razors. Wash your clothes in a sink if you have to. Look clean. Look invisible. A man in a gray suit approached, and my body tensed. Instinct. 3 months on the streets teaches you that when someone in a suit knows your name, it's rarely good, but this man, he moved differently. Purposeful, confident, like he'd been looking for something specific. And had finally found it. Colton Reed? He asked, pulling out a leather wallet. My first instinct was to run, but I was tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of being nobody from nowhere. Depends who's asking, I said. He smiled faintly. My name is Vincent Morales. I'm a private investigator. He handed me a card. Expensive cardstock, embossed letters, real, legitimate. I've been searching for you for 3 months, he said. Your biological father hired me years ago, but your adoption records were sealed. When you turned 18 and applied for jobs using your social security number, I finally got a hit. The words, biological father, hit me like lightning. My heart was pounding in my ears. My biological father? Vincent sat down beside me. Didn't care that his suit touched the dirty concrete. That small act of humanity meant more than he probably realized. Theodore Brennan, he said softly. He's been looking for you since the day he signed the adoption papers. Been looking? I repeated. Was? The past tense caught in my throat. Why isn't he here? Vincent's eyes softened. The kind of look people give right before they break bad news. I'm sorry to tell you this way, he said quietly. But he passed away last week. Heart attack at his desk. He was still searching. For you when it happened. The world went silent. Again. The city noise faded, and I was right back where I started, holding a new truth that felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. A father I never knew had spent his whole life looking for me, and now he was gone. But somewhere in that moment I realized maybe his search wasn't over. Maybe it was my turn to start looking. Because if he spent his life trying to find me, then what, or who, was I really supposed to find next? It's strange how words can break you, even when they're supposed to save you. I remember standing there, outside the Dallas Public Library, sunlight bouncing off the glass doors, that thick Texas heat pressing down like a weight, when Vincent Morales told me the words that cracked my world open. Your father's name was Theodore Brennan. The words didn't make sense at first. For 3 months, I'd been just another face in the crowd. Another nobody sleeping in a shelter cot, washing my clothes in public sinks, pretending not to notice the stares. I'd spent those nights imagining that maybe somewhere out there someone was looking for me. And now someone had. But before I could even process it, he was already gone. Vincent swiped on his tablet, and suddenly I was staring at a face that looked like mine, aged 30 years. Same brown eyes, same tired expression, but his weren't empty like mine. They were alive, determined. He stood in front of a towering glass building with Brennan Oil Industries on her etched into the entrance. Oil. The word hit me like a whisper from my past. I remembered old man Jennings from the shelter joking once, "Kid, you look like you got oil in your blood." Turns out, maybe he was right. Vincent's voice was calm, practiced, like someone used to delivering news that changed lives. He started with one rig 20 years ago. Built it into an empire. Never married. Never had other kids. Said he couldn't. Not until he found you. My voice cracked before I could stop it. Why did he give me up? Vincent pulled up another photo. This one old, grainy, a young man holding a newborn baby. The pride in his face was unmistakable. He was 22 when you were born. Your mother, Emily Cololton, died in childbirth. His parents convinced him he couldn't raise a baby alone, that you'd be better off in a stable home. He signed the papers and regretted it within a week. A week? I could feel the anger rise from somewhere deep. He regretted it after a week, I said quietly, and it took him 18 years to find me. Vincent sighed. He tried to reverse the adoption immediately. But by then, you were already placed with the Reeds. The records were sealed. He spent nearly 2 decades and millions of dollars trying to break through the walls. He hired 14 private investigators. I was the last one. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder, thick, worn, stuffed with documents. 3 years ago, I found you. Found the Reeds. But when Theodore tried to make contact, they threatened legal action, restraining orders, harassment charges. They knew, Colton. They knew he was looking for you. And they never told you. My hands started shaking. Beverly and Harold? They had known. Someone had wanted me. Someone had loved me. And they'd hidden it, just to keep collecting their checks. Vincent's voice softened. He was supposed to be here. The plan was to meet you the day you turned 18, when the Reeds no longer had legal control, but the heart attack happened March 13th, 2 days before your birthday. March 13th, while I was stocking shelves in an auto shop, trying to figure out what kind of cake Beverly might actually let me buy for my birthday. My father was dying at his desk, still trying to find me. Vincent stood, buttoning his suit jacket. There's more. We need to go to the lawyer's office. There are documents you need to see, decisions you need to make. I laughed bitterly. Decisions? I live in a shelter. I have $20 and 1 pair of shoes. What kind of decisions could I possibly need to make? Vincent looked at me with something almost like pity. Theodore Brennan left everything to you. Every asset, every share of stock, every cent. Colton, you're about to become one of the wealthiest people in Texas. The world seemed to tilt. For a moment, I just stood there, outside the library that had become my only refuge, trying to make sense of the words. Me, the homeless kid with a garbage bag for luggage. Wealthy. I don't understand. I whispered. He didn't know me. I could be anyone, Vincent smiled sadly. You're his son. That was enough, he paused. He used to say, I don't need to know him to love him. I've loved him since the day I lost him. The drive to the lawyer's office felt unreal. Vincent's car smelled of leather and quiet power. The kind of luxury I'd only seen through store windows. The air conditioning was cold enough to make my skin sting. For once, I didn't mind. He told me about my father as we drove through glass towers and manicured neighborhoods, places I never even knew existed in Dallas. He talked about you constantly, Vincent said. Every meeting ended with your name. The board used to joke that Brennan Oil wasn't an energy company. It was an 18-year search fund to find his son. The elevator ride to the 40th floor felt endless. I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall, my thrift store clothes, my tired eyes, and thought, I don't belong here. The conference room had walls of glass overlooking the entire city. Somewhere below us, the shelter where I'd slept for 3 months looked like a toy. A woman stepped forward, crisp and composed. Mr. Reed, she said. I'm Ms. Chen, Mr. Brennan's attorney. Please sit. We have a lot to discuss. I almost corrected her, almost said, that's not really my name. But for the first time, I let it pass. She placed a sealed envelope on the table. My father's name was scrawled across the front. He wrote this the morning he passed, she said softly. He wanted you to be the one to open it. My fingers trembled as I tore it open. Inside were 3 pages, handwritten, rushed, and a small brass key attached to a tag with an address. The first line hit like a punch. My son, if you're reading this, I failed to find you in time. But at least you've been found. He wrote about my mother, Emily, the love of his life. How he was 22, grieving, manipulated by his parents into signing papers he didn't understand. I thought I was giving you a better life, the letter said. But what I gave you was absence. I regretted it within a week, and I've been paying for it every day since. I had to stop reading. The room went blurry. Ms. Chen quietly slid a box of tissues across the table. By the time I tried to undo it, you were gone. Sealed behind legal walls I could never break. I spent 18 years and a fortune trying. Every time I thought I was close, the system closed its doors again. But I never stopped. I never will. The next line was underlined. The key opens a vault at the address below. Inside is everything I've gathered while searching for you. Every letter I wrote, every gift I bought, every truth I uncovered about why this became my life's mission. I turned the brass key in my hand, the metal warm from my grip. He had left me a vault. Vincent drove me to the address, an unmarked building in Houston's industrial district. The kind of place you'd drive past without a second glance. But inside was something I'll never forget. 3 layers of security, retinal scan, thumbprint, code entry, and then a single room. The moment the lights flicked on, I couldn't breathe. The walls were covered floor to ceiling with my life, my missing life, thousands of pages. Investigation reports, photos, newspaper clippings. Every Colton Reed in America had been tracked, investigated, crossed out in red pen. There were printouts of my high school's honor roll, my name circled with a note. Could this be him? He had been so close, so many times. In the center of the room stood a single table stacked with boxes, 18 of them, each labeled by year, each filled with unopened birthday presents. So I turned the other mansions into something better. Transitional homes for kids aging out of foster care. For teens sleeping in the same shelters I once did. The Dallas shelter where I spent 3 months eating expired sandwiches and praying no one stole my shoes. Now it receives a monthly donation that guarantees no one there ever goes hungry again. The director asked me once why I didn't want my name on anything. Told her the truth. It's not charity when you've been there. It's just paying a debt to the universe. Vincent still works for me, but his job changed too. Now we find other lost kids. Other parents who lost children to the system. In the past year, we've reunited 12 families. Last month, I watched a 17-year-old boy meet his mother for the first time since he was 2. I sat at a table across the restaurant while they cried over untouched pasta. That's what Theodore never got. That moment, that reunion, that closure, but I still try to give it to others. Because he taught me what love looks like, even from beyond the grave. I visited Beverly and Harold once. Just once. They'd moved into a small apartment on the wrong side of Dallas. Rusted bars on the windows. A flickering hallway light. When Beverly opened the door, she didn't even look surprised. "Colton," she said coldly, "we gave you what you needed." I looked her in the eye and replied, "No, you gave me what the state paid you to give. Theodore gave me everything else." Harold shuffled forward, eyes tired, voice hopeful. "We heard about your inheritance. Maybe you could help us out. We did raise you for 18 years. I should have been furious. But all I felt was pity. You raised me for $324,000 in state subsidies," I said quietly. "By my count, you've already been paid in full." And I left. I never looked back. The island my father built for me, Colton Island, remains untouched. A small house, fishing gear, sports equipment, books on every subject. He had prepared for every version of me. I go there sometimes when running the company feels too heavy. I sit on the dock he built and fish with the rod he bought me. Catch nothing, just exist in the space he made for us. Old man Jennings once joked that I had oil in my blood. Turns out he was right, literally. But it's not the oil that matters. It's the fire, the determination, the refusal to give up. Every signature I make as CEO, I sign Colton Brennan. Because that's who I was always meant to be. The Kai Theodore Brennan Foster Foundation has already placed 40 kids into safe, loving homes. This time, real families. Families who want children, not checks. We pay for everything, but the money goes to the children, not the parents. I personally interview every applicant. I can spot the difference between a house and a home, between obligation and love, between caregivers and parents. Last week, I got a letter from a 7-year-old named Marcus, written in blue crayon. Thank you for my family. They read me stories every night. They say they love me even when I'm not good. They put my pictures on the wall. That letter sits on my desk next to my father's final note. 2 generations of love, one lost, one found. Money can't erase those 3 months I spent in shelters. It can't replace 18 years of silence. It can't bring back the man who loved me enough to die trying to find me, but it can make sure no one else has to live that story, because Theodore's love didn't end with his death. It echoes, through me, through every family we reunite, every life we rebuild. He taught me what real love looks like, not a monthly subsidy, not a contract, not an obligation. Love looks like 18 years of unopened birthday gifts, waiting in a vault. It looks like letters, written to a ghost. It looks like a man building an empire just so his lost son might hear the noise. Theodore. Brennan died believing he failed, but he didn't. He taught me how to love without expectation, how to fight without surrender, how to build something beautiful from grief. He taught me the difference between being kept and being loved. And every night, before I sleep, I play that video again, his voice shaky, hopeful. I love you, son. I'm coming for you. This time, nothing will stop me. Death stopped him, but love didn't. Love found a way. It always does. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see that birthday dinner he planned, the restaurant, the chocolate cake, the candles. In that dream, he's there. We sit across from each other. 2 strangers with the same face, the same eyes, the same fire in our blood. He tells me he's sorry. I tell him I understand. We both cry over chocolate cake that tastes like redemption. Then I wake up. In his house, running his company, living his dream, and I realize he found me after all. I made it home. But somewhere deep down, I can still feel him searching, still reaching, still whispering the same 3 words that started it all. Welcome home, son. And maybe, just maybe, the search isn't over yet.